Thank you, Mr. President. It's a great honor to be with you and with all the leaders on this panel. This bill is important for the country, but I want you to know that the bill is important to me because you didn't forget Indian country. This bill overall has more than $11 billion in investment in Indian country. That is historic, potentially transformational investment for tribes across this country. That's Indian nations across this country working as sovereigns to sovereigns with the United States. For us, broadband is a high priority. You know, no Cherokee kid ought to be going to school without access to high-speed internet. No elder ought to lack access to the kind of telemedicine that we're making available to our people because they live in an area without connectivity. The entrepreneurs that we know are out there in some of our little communities and our bigger communities, they shouldn't miss opportunities to develop because they live in an area where they can't connect with the rest of the world. Cherokee families ought to be able to connect just like anyone else. And connectivity and broadband is important for the country. In Indian country, the problem is particularly difficult in the rural parts of Indian country in particular. So we're dealing with that at Cherokee Nation. We've already, as you indicated, have invested heavily into that cause for the reasons that I mentioned. But there's another reason, which is that if a lot of these small communities in these rural areas wither on the vine because they don't have broadband and a chance to succeed in the new economy, that means Cherokee lifeways and culture and our language withers on the vine, and we can't let that happen. So this is an important moment for the Cherokee Nation. During COVID, what we found is what we already were concerned about, which is that when you have a lack of high-speed internet and you have the worst public health crisis in living memory, and students are having to change the way they learn, and elders are having to be more isolated, the families are having to socially distance from their fellow Cherokees, we know that it's more important than ever to stay connected. And what we found, we used a Department of Interior grant, and we found that 35 of our communities lacked connectivity, but we went right to work to stand up hotspots in those communities. We issued 11,000 hotspots to students and other Cherokees who needed them just to get us through. That was important. It was a significant investment, but it really is a drop in the bucket, Mr. President, of what we need as we went out and visited with these families. So we are applying for the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Grant to the United States Department of Commerce, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. What this bill does is it injects $2 billion, more dollars into that program. It extends the life of the program by 4 years. That's going to let tribes like the Cherokee Nation that are already working on this to grab those dollars and put them immediately to work to scale up what I'm talking about. So those communities where we put up hotspots, we'll build out the infrastructure needed to make permanent connectivity in those communities. We'll make sure that those kids and those elders stay connected. And the other thing that your administration has done is its commitment to working and consulting in a meaningful manner with tribal nations. And that's why we have confidence when we work with your Department of Commerce that we can tailor these programs in a way that's flexible, that reflects what we need in our rural communities, in our Cherokee communities. We have great confidence in that. So it's as much about the respect as it is about the dollars. But the dollars, of course, are indispensable, and they are plentiful in this bill. We recently visited, Mr. President, an elderly family, some Cherokee elders that are fluent Cherokee speakers. They live in a little community called Bellefonte. They had told us that they actually didn't go to their telemedicine appointments during COVID when we had to keep our health facilities limited in terms of access because they didn't have connectivity. And we didn't know it. So we partnered with Starlink, and we have high-speed internet to their home. And so our Deputy Chief, Brian Warner, and I got on a virtual conference with them. They said they'd only seen something like that on TV. They never thought they would do it. It's opening up an entire world to them. And what it told me, Mr. President, and what I think it tells a lot of tribal leaders is that we have a chance to get a foothold in the economy for our people. But this is very important. Those are fluent Cherokee speakers. If we don't succeed right now in connecting elders to kids, connecting schools, connecting healthcare, we will lose something that's irreplaceable. It's more irreplaceable than the economic development that we know this bill will generate. It's more important than anything, and that is Cherokee language and culture. When we look back, Mr. President, generations from now, and know that we saved it, know that Cherokee language is thriving and that our economy is doing good and that our reservation is a place where there's prosperity, we're going to look back at this moment and we're going to see that we had this opportunity to make transformational change. We couldn't have done it without our federal partners. We're certainly proud of our leadership. We couldn't do it without this bill, I'm confident. And you have my great appreciation and admiration for that.